My name is Kwaku, and this is not just a story about betrayal. It's a story about how broken pieces can still build a kingdom. I grew up not in the lap of luxury, but in the arms of love. My mother, Ama, was the youngest of the 5 children, in a powerful coastal family in Ghana. She was kind, beautiful, but different. She believed in humility, in kindness, in hard work values that clashed with her siblings' obsession with power and image. They called her the village girl, even though she was their blood. And when she gave birth to me out of wedlock, they erased her completely. My earliest memories were of her sweet voice singing lullabies by our small clay stove. We lived in a modest house, cracked walls, leaking roof, but it was warm with love. She died when I was 10. They said it was illness, but I remember how scared she looked in those last days. I remember the whispers. I remember the day she told me to never go to the villa unless I had something worth showing them. After her death, Auntie Essie took me in. She was my mother's only friend among the family. She had been disowned for marrying a teacher instead of a politician. She raised me like I was her own son. I grew up helping her sell cloth at the roadside, school during the day, errands at night, while my cousins posted pictures from international schools and yachts. I learned to sew torn hems and mix paint for our house. I didn't mind. I was content. Until that wedding invitation arrived. It was from my cousin Nana Kwame, the pride of the family. His wedding was to be held at the family's prestigious villa coastal mansion passed down for 3 generations, perched atop the cliffs of Cape 3 Points. The invitation felt like a dare. I didn't plan to go at first. Auntie Essie said I didn't owe them anything, but something in me burned. I wanted them to see that I still existed, that Ama's son hadn't vanished. I borrowed a blazer 2 sizes too big from Pastor Kojo and cleaned my only pair of shoes until they shined like new coins. The day of the wedding arrived like a storm wrapped in sunlight. I took the early trotro, clutching the invitation like a passport to another world. The villa was even grander than I imagined. Towering gates, white pillars, marble floors, fountains shaped like lions. Guests wore silk and gold. Laughter echoed through the air like wine spilling from a glass. I walked in with a nervous smile. No one noticed me until they did. "Kwaku," a voice called out, surprised. It was Ya, my cousin. She looked me up and down like I was a wet dog in a banquet hall. "You're here." I nodded. I received the invitation. She blinked. I suppose everyone was invited. I moved past her, determined to be invisible. But whispers followed me like shadows. "That's Ama's boy. He came. How bold. Did you see his shoes?" I found a quiet corner near the back and watched the ceremony unfold like a fairy tale in which I had no role. But fate is never quiet for long. During the reception, as I reached for a glass of juice, someone screamed. A diamond necklace was missing from Nana Kwame's bride. Chaos erupted. Security was called. The entire lawn was in an uproar. And then they turned to me. He was near the table. Someone said, double quotes, "Yes." I saw him looking at the gifts, added another. It happened so fast. I tried to speak, to explain. But their eyes were already full of judgment. Security searched my pockets. Nothing. They checked my bag. Still nothing. And yet, he's the only outsider here. Nana Kwame said. He doesn't belong. Ja stepped forward. "You should leave." I looked at Auntie Essie, who had come with me. Her face was red, not with shame, but fury. But she didn't speak. She knew nothing would change their minds. "I didn't take anything," I said softly. "We know," said Uncle Badu, the oldest of the siblings. "But trouble follows your mother's blood." Those words crushed me more than the false accusation. I turned and walked away. Past the fountain, through the gate, back down the winding road. My suitcase was heavier than before, not because of weight, but because of everything I carried inside. Anger, embarrassment, pain. They had taken my mother from me. Now they had taken my dignity. But what they didn't know was this: the fire they tried to put out had only just begun to burn. That night, I sat outside our small house with Auntie Essie. "Let them have their villa," I said, voice cracking. "One day, I'll have something greater." She nodded slowly. "I believe you," she whispered. "I didn't know how. I had no money. No connections, no fancy degree. All I had was pain. But pain, when mixed with purpose, is the seed of greatness." And that night, beneath a sky full of stars and broken dreams, I planted that seed. When the world shuts its door in your face, it doesn't mean you're not worthy of stepping through. It simply means you were meant to build your own. After that humiliating day at the family villa, my name became a stain on their silk. Whispers traveled faster than the coastal winds. They said I was trouble, a thief, a reject. No one called to apologize. No one asked for my side of the story. The diamond was eventually found, misplaced by the bride herself. But by then, the damage had been done. I was still the boy who didn't belong. But I refused to be the boy who stayed down. The next morning, I went into town where a newly opened beachfront restaurant was looking for help. The sign read, "Waiters needed. No experience necessary." Perfect. The place was small, just a collection of palm umbrellas, white chairs, and a wooden deck facing the ocean. It wasn't much, but it buzzed with energy: tourists taking pictures, locals selling trinkets, musicians playing drums. The owner, Mr. Kojo Baini, was a grumpy man with a deep voice and quick hands. He looked at me and frowned. "You ever waited tables before?" "No," I said, "but I'm a fast learner." He sighed. "We'll see." That was how I began carrying trays, wiping tables, memorizing menus. I spilled drinks, I got yelled at. I broke plates, but I never complained. I worked double shifts. When others laughed during breaks, I read business books I borrowed from a teacher in town. I kept a small notebook in my pocket and jotted everything down: how much each table spent, which dishes sold the most, how to deal with rude customers. I was invisible to many, but I paid attention to everything. Months passed, seasons changed. I saved every coin I could, giving half to Auntie Essie, keeping the rest under my bed in a biscuit tin. It wasn't much, but it was mine. One evening, as I cleared the last table, an older gentleman with silver hair and round glasses called me over. "You're Kwaku, right?" I nodded, unsure. "I've been watching you," he said. "You work hard. You think? You care." I wasn't sure what to say. No one had ever said that to me before. He smiled. "I used to manage resorts across Africa. Retired now. But watching you reminds me of myself when I was young." His name was Mr. Solomon Ajay, and he would change my life. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Ajay became my mentor. He taught me things no book could: how to read people, how to negotiate, how to lead with presence. He shared stories of working in Kenya, South Africa, Zanzibar. He told me hospitality wasn't about rooms or food, it was about how you made people feel. "You can build buildings," he said, "but the real wealth is building experiences." One day, after the restaurant closed, he asked, "What do you really want, Kwaku?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to build something of my own, a place where no one feels like I did that day at the villa." He looked at me long and hard. Then, "It's time you stop waiting tables and start building dreams." That night, he introduced me to a Gesta, quiet British Ghanaian investor named Fuxia, Mrs. Adoma, who was looking to support small African entrepreneurs. She liked my story. She liked my hunger. But she gave me a challenge. "Find land. Show me you can build a plan. I'll fund the first stage. Land. Where would I get land? I remembered something my mother told me in whispers when I was younger. The family land by the coast. It was mine once, before they took it. I dug into old records, searched municipal offices. With Mr. Ajay's help, I founded a small but beautiful parcel of land near the cliffs. Just a mile away from the family villa, it was under my mother's name, but it had been transferred to Leakley years ago. I was furious, but I didn't throw stones. I filed paperwork. I worked with a kind lawyer who knew my story. I fought quietly, legally. And eventually, justice whispered in my favor. The land was mine again. That night, I walked the beach in silence. The wind howled like the voices of my ancestors. I dropped to my knees and wept, not out of sadness, but gratitude. The land wasn't just soil. It was my inheritance, my mother's voice, my redemption. I drew sketches, designed plans. I wanted bungalows facing the ocean, hammocks between palm trees, a restaurant that served jollof with pride, live music under the stars. It wouldn't be grand like the villa. It would be real. Mrs. Adama kept her word. The funding came. Workers were hired. I learned construction basics from scratch. I stayed on site every day, mixing cement, painting walls, building not just rooms but purpose, and people came. Slowly, at first backpackers, artists, nature lovers, but soon influencers, journalists, even celebrities began to visit. They liked the authenticity. The heart, I named it Amma Tides Resort in honor of my mother. It was not just a resort, it was my return and the family. They didn't know, not yet, but the winds were turning. Rumors were reaching them. A new resort, close by, popular, powerful. They thought it was competition. They didn't know it was me. Not yet, but they would, because fate always brings the tide back to shore. They say success is the best revenge. But I wasn't chasing revenge. I was chasing something bigger: respect, legacy. And healing Amma Tides Resort was no longer just a quiet retreat on the edge of the coast. It had become a name whispered through the streets of Accra and Kumasi. Tourists called it a hidden gem. Travel bloggers posted sunset photos, tagging it with glowing reviews. I had built more than a resort. I had built a sanctuary, and word was beginning to spread. One afternoon, as I reviewed our new construction plans with a contractor, a familiar voice echoed behind me. "Is this your place?" I turned around. It was Yaa, my cousin. Her makeup was perfect, but her smile wobbled. Behind her stood two other cousins I hadn't seen since the wedding: Kojo and Senna. They wore designer sunglasses, but their eyes were sharp with curiosity. I greeted them calmly, offered water, invited them to sit under one of the shaded pavilions near the restaurant. "I didn't know you were back," Ya said. "I never left," I replied. "I was always just building." She laughed nervously. "We've heard things. Everyone's talking about Amma Tides. Didn't realize it was you behind it." Kojo leaned forward. "It's impressive, really. But what's your long game? You're this close to the family villa. It can't be a coincidence." I met his eyes. "It's not about them. It's about me. I wanted a place that welcomed people who were once turned away." The silence that followed was thicker than the sea breeze. Ya cleared her throat. "You know, the family's having trouble. The villa business isn't doing so well. Ever since Uncle Badu passed, things have been messy." I didn't react. She leaned in closer. "There's talk of selling. Investors are circling, but no one's committed yet." There it was. The first sign. The wind was shifting. Later that week, I sat with Mr. Ajay on our private deck as we watched the sun dip into the sea. I told him what Ja said. He nodded slowly. "And what do you want to do?" I paused. "I want to buy it." He raised a brow. "The villa?" I nodded, not out of vengeance, not out of pride, but because I wanted to end the cycle. Not burn down their legacy, but build mine on my terms. Mr. Ajay made a call, and within days we were in meetings. The villa was managed by a trust now. The current caretaker, a desperate cousin with no head for business, was eager to sell. Maintenance costs were too high. Tourism had slowed. The place had lost its shine. They wanted to cut their losses. I wanted to make a statement. We negotiated for weeks. They didn't know at first that it was me behind the bid. The paperwork had been done through my holding company, Adama Coastal Holdings. But on the day of the final signing, I walked in personally. The cousin's face turned pale. "You?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Me," he tried to backtrack, claimed. He was rethinking the offer, but it was too late. The documents were sealed. The ink was dry. I was now the majority owner of the villa, the same villa from which they had banned me. The news spread like wildfire. Some called it poetic justice, others called it luck, but those who knew it was destiny. The villa was in bad shape though. The gardens were overgrown. The roof leaked. The pool had algae floating like ghosts from the past. But I didn't flinch. I got to work. I hired local builders, restored the murals, kept the history, but upgraded the heart. I merged it with AMA Tides, expanding the brand into a full-scale destination to properties. One vision. The villa was renamed AMA Cliffs. I put my mother's name on every wall, every brochure, every story we told. And then I invited the family, all of them, even those who had turned their backs. They came, some out of curiosity, some out of guilt, some out of fear. I stood at the top of the restored staircase, the same one where they had once whispered about my shoes, my clothes, my background. Now they whispered something else. "Is that Kwiku?" I welcomed them with grace, no mockery, no cruelty, just power in the form of peace. Some tried to act like nothing had happened. Others, like Kojo, pulled me aside with a handshake and said, "You've done well. Really well." And then there was Ja, who stared at the marble floors and said softly, "I'm sorry." I smiled. "Thank you," I replied. "I accept that." But not everyone came in peace. Uncle Mensa, who had once accused my mother of shaming the family, refused to speak to me. He stormed off mid-tour, muttering about how things had changed too much. I let him go. I didn't need his validation, because as I walked through the corridors of the villa that once rejected me, I realized this was no longer their kingdom. It was mine, not because I had taken it, but because I had earned it. From broken plates and whispered insults to oceanfront dreams and gold-lettered signs, I had risen not above them, but beyond them. And the best part, I wasn't done yet. The day I officially reopened the family villa under the new name AMA Cliffs was the first time I felt my mother's spirit walking beside me. Her name was carved on a golden plaque near the entrance, in memory of AMA, whose strength now lives in stone and sea. Guests clapped, music played. Palm leaves rustled in the wind as if whispering blessings. But beneath the applause and speeches, something deeper stirred. This wasn't just an opening, it was a return. 1 week later, the family gathered for the first official family meeting in the villa since Uncle Badu's death, not by their invitation, but by mine. They sat around the long mahogany table, polished, heavy, imposing. The same table where decisions had once been made without my mother's voice in the room. Now, it stood in the heart of a building she inspired. I stood at the head of the table, dressed in traditional kente with gold embroidery, a quiet smile on my face. There was silence at first. No one wanted to speak, so I did. "I want to thank you all for coming," I said. "It's not easy to sit in a place filled with memories, some sweet, some bitter. But today, we turn a page. Kojo cleared his throat. Let's not pretend this isn't awkward, Kweku. I nodded. It is, but it's necessary. Aunt Afua, who hadn't spoken to me in over 10 years, looked around nervously. You bought the villa. But what does that mean for us? Was the family's land for generations? It still is, I said. The villa belongs to the resort now, but I've reserved space for family. Rooms, access, events. The door is open. But under new terms of respect, responsibility, and accountability. That word accountability made some squirm. YAA spoke next. You're not just a businessman now, Kweku. You're a leader, and leaders don't hold grudges. Nodded again. You're right, I don't hold grudges. But I don't forget. I turned to Uncle Mensa. I didn't forget how you spoke of my mother. I didn't forget how you pushed us out. And I didn't forget how you all turned your backs when you thought I was nothing. He looked away, jaw clenched. I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying it to remind you. I got here not because of you but in spite of you. The room grew quiet. Then I took a deep breath. But this isn't about revenge. It never was. This is about building something new. I opened a folder and slid out printed documents. I'm offering positions. Partnerships. Not as handouts, but as opportunities. If you want to contribute, you can. If not, that's fine too. But the old ways are over. The name Amma will never again be pushed aside in this family. Some nodded. Others stayed silent, and then came the unexpected, a voice from the back, soft, trembling. It was Nana Kwam, the groom from the infamous wedding day. He hadn't spoken to me in years. I was wrong, he said quietly. We all were, and I owe you more than an apology. Owe you thanks. I looked at him, surprised. My business collapsed during the pandemic. I lost everything. If I had half the strength you had, I might have survived it. It was a rare moment of vulnerability. I accepted it with a nod. Thank you. That night, I walked through the corridors of AMA Cliffs alone. The moonlight spilled across the marble floors. The ocean roared in the distance. I paused by the balcony where I had once stood as a child, peeking through the gates, hoping to be accepted. Now, the gates were open. The walls were mine. The name on the door was my mother's, but none of that compared to what came next. 3 days later, I received a letter, hand-delivered. It was from the Land Commission. Inside was a final Report 10 investigation. That's why I had requested. Nearly a year ago, into the legal transfer of my mother's land, it confirmed what I had long suspected. She didn't sign the land. Way willingly. She was threatened, manipulated. Her illness, likely the result of stress-induced hypertension, made worse by isolation and betrayal. Uncle Mensa's name appeared repeatedly in the documents. I sat in silence. Grief has a way of sneaking back in, even when you think you've made peace. But instead of rage, I felt something else: closure. I didn't confront him. I didn't need to. I took the letter to the edge of the cliffs, tore it into pieces, and let the sea carry it away. My mother was gone, but her legacy now breathed through every corner of this place. That weekend, AMA Cliffs hosted its first cultural retreat. Storytellers, poets, young artists from villages across the region. We lit bonfires, shared food, sang into the night for the first time. The villa was alive not with wealth and pride, but with soul, and in the distance, just beyond the hill, the old family graveyard sat under the stars. I visited my mother's grave before sunrise, laid down fresh flowers, and whispered, "We made it, Ma. We finally made it." There's a moment, just before dawn, when the world is silent, not asleep, not awake, just listening. That's how it felt as I stood alone on the balcony of AMA Cliffs, watching the horizon glow with the promise of a new day. The waves Below crashed with calm authority, as if they knew their purpose. And for the first time in my life, I knew mine too. The resort was no longer just a business. It had become a movement. We opened a second kitchen to feed local children during school breaks. Auntie Essie ran it, beaming with pride in her apron. I used to serve food under a tin roof. She'd laugh. Now look at me running a beachfront canteen. We partnered with artisans, carvers, weavers, painters, giving them space in the resort market to sell their work to guests from around the world. And each month, I hosted a storytelling night called Voices of the Coast, where elders and youth shared tales beneath the stars, keeping our oral traditions alive. But it wasn't just growth I had to manage. It was peace, you see. Power doesn't erase tension. It just puts it in a different room. Some family members accepted the new order with grace, like Ya, who now managed the Villa Spa, and Kojo, who took charge of marketing and finally found purpose beyond pride. Others, like Uncle Menser, remained silent. Distant, he refused every invitation, sent no messages. His silence spoke louder than insults, and yet I respected it. Some people need more time to accept the rise of those they once oppressed. Let them take their time. The world would keep spinning. Then, one humid afternoon, something unexpected happened. A young woman arrived at the resort, asking for me. She was dressed modestly, her eyes shy but sharp. "I'm sorry to come without notice," she said, "but I'm your cousin, from your father's side." My heart stilled. I hadn't heard that name in years. My father had vanished before I was born. My mother never spoke of him. All I had were whispers, fragments, and a single photograph, faded, torn, hidden in a wooden box beneath her bed. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly. "But he died last year, and in his final days, he asked us to find you, to tell you he was sorry, that he always loved your mother. But fear made him weak." I didn't know what to say. Pain doesn't always come in loud explosions. Sometimes it arrives in quiet waves. Long after the thunder has passed, she handed me a letter, written in trembling handwriting. "My son, if you're reading this, I am gone. I do not deserve forgiveness, but I beg you to live free of the chains I wore: fear, pride, and silence. You are more than my mistakes. You are your mother's light. Forgive me if you can. And if not, live fully. That will be enough. Okay?" I folded the letter slowly, held it to my chest, and exhaled years of confusion, abandonment, and aching questions. Forgiveness didn't come in a flash. It came like rain, soft, steady, healing. I thanked the girl. We shared a meal. I offered her a tour of the resort. Before she left, she turned to me and said, "Your mother would be so proud." I smiled. "She's here," I replied, "everywhere." Months passed. The resort grew. Guests came from all over Europe, America, other parts of Africa. Celebrities posted photos. Journalists wrote features, but more important than the headlines were the quiet victories. The boy I once mentored, Kwabeno, was now in university studying architecture. He said he wanted to build homes that felt like hope. The woman who once sold bracelets on the beach now ran our entire gift shop, and Auntie Essie. She became the heartbeat of the resort. People called her Mama Ama. She ran morning meditations by the water, sharing proverbs and tea. One evening, as the sky turned orange and gold, I stood at the center of the resort, watching children run across the grass. Musicians tuning their drums, couples laughing over cocktails. And then I saw them, my family, all of them. Even Uncle Mensa. He walked slowly, leaning on a cane, his steps unsure but intentional. I met him halfway. He looked at me, no words. Then, a simple nod, and for us, that was enough. That night, We held a celebration under the stars marking 1 year since the reopening of AMA Cliffs and the birth of a new chapter. I gave a speech, but not about money, not about power, about belonging. I said I was once the boy who wasn't allowed through the gates. I now open them for others. I was once the boy they whispered about. Now I speak so others can rise. This resort isn't just bricks and rooms. It's proof that stories don't end in shame. They evolve into legacies. The crowd clapped, but the loudest applause came from within me, from the boy who once walked away from that villa with nothing but a suitcase and a promise. I kept that promise, not with revenge, but with vision, not with noise, but with legacy and If you ever visit the coast of Ghana and find yourself standing on the cliffs where the sea meets the sky, you might see a sign, a golden plaque weathered by salt and sun. It reads, "Welcome to AMA Tides and AMA Cliffs, where stories begin again." And if you listen closely, you'll hear the waves whispering my mother's name, Ama, the one they forgot, the one we'll never forget. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Till to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.